Hello, welcome to the channel. This kind of almost a spontaneous video. I didn't actually expect to do this one. Matter of fact, this kind of video is probably perfect for those of you who want to just have something on in the background while you're painting. So feel free to do that. Save me to your watch later list if you're going to do that. I think I'll call it Battle Stations or something like that. Just think about it. At the end of this week, 8th edition drops. Yeah, I know some of you have been playing it already, stores copies, advanced copies, what have you. But no, I mean 8th edition drops. New models are out, all the books are out. Everyone is going to be able to access the information physically in hand, their own copies, and really start pouring over it and making sense of this. And I wasn't planning on doing a video about this at all because, you know, there's so much of it already on the web. But as I saw some others do some videos and some of their kind of how they're going to approach it, I thought, you know what, I think maybe I do have some 2 cents to throw in there. So for what it's worth, here it is. Okay, just kind of on the level setting, I'll be getting the Xenos 2 book this weekend, and I'm going to be able to, with that, play half of my armies. There'll be 3 of them in that book: the Tau, the Tyranids, and the Orc. So the Tyranids will be my Exiled Dragon Masters, the actual dinosaurs and the ones riding the dragons. Now, I'm going to take a slightly different approach to 8th than I did with 7th, okay? So, a couple things. I have not played a single 8th edition game yet, on purpose. I haven't watched a single 8th edition bat rep, on purpose. I have heard about peers playing 8th edition games. One was, I was playing Frostgrave this last weekend. An 8th edition game was playing on the table next to me. I didn't really pay attention to it. I knew enough about a couple of the rules to answer quick questions, but I really didn't get involved. I don't really know what happened in the game on purpose. Okay. Now, I'm not knocking anyone who spent time with the bat reps and pouring over it and doing all the gaming early. Not a problem. Just the way I like to learn is a little different than other people. I like to physically have things in my hand and reference things. Matter of fact, you know, a lot of times when an opponent is playing me and I'm trying to understand how a certain rule works and they say they can do something, I don't ask them to show it to me because I don't trust them. I learn by actually being able to read it and see it and understand it. So that's what I need to be able to do: physically hold it in my hands and pour over it, turn the pages, go back, cross-reference back and forth. So that's just me. Okay. So I'm not knocking anyone who's done any of these things with 8th edition yet. This is just my approach. But I want to suggest that there are some advantages that I think I'm going to experience by the approach I think I'm going to be taking. And I'm going to offer it up to you guys. Just maybe you might want to think about it, regardless of your learning style, and regardless of the army you play. And I want to kind of dial this back because I want to refer to some history here, military history here. Think about it. Whenever there was a technological or tactical upheaval, new things came. When the tanks first appeared on the battlefield in France, when dive bombers first came in support of infantry during the invasion of Poland, the first time strategic bombing, actually with heavy bombers, kind of started taking on industry. All these different things, the first time a jet fighter came out, all these things that changed the rules of the game, I think actually will give us some perspective if we think about how did those work in real life. How should we respond to the rules being rewritten, okay? And I do intentionally pun that one, but let's think about this. In 6th, going from 5th to 6th to 7th, you really didn't have that big of a change. You simply had to recost your armies, maybe add new pieces of work here and give up some old ones that didn't exist anymore. But it was basically the same cool rules with some cool new things. Really, you had some slight changes. Here, pretty much the game is being rewritten. Tactics are still tactics, but you have to look at the units differently now. So, 2 things are going to come into play this weekend. Now, where I am, the game shop where I spend my Saturdays, we're going to be taking a very deliberate learning approach to the game up until the I can't remember the name of the global campaign. I just forgot the name of it. But what we're going to do is we're starting this first weekend where everyone's going to play using a combat patrol detachment and 40 power levels. The reason they're trying to do that is to allow multiple games to go in to get it be done in one day, and give us everyone a chance to really learn the rules without a lot of figures on the board. I don't know about you, but if you ever tried to learn something, if you dive in with too much, it's information overload. And I know a lot of the bat rips are out there. I have not watched a single one. I have no interest in watching those yet, because honestly, though they may give you familiarity, I believe they are a little less useful in really understanding what 8th edition really means. Because if you're not actually experiencing yourself, what you're going through and what your opponent is going through in this learning process, I don't think you're really going to understand the implications of 8th. Now let me kind of explain that. Think about this. Let's use some historical examples. When the Japanese prepared for their invasion of China, and during the early part of the China campaign, they developed the Zero. Okay, the Zero was a completely different concept in fighter aircraft from what was then being kind of espoused by countries like the U.S. Great Britain to a certain extent, but you know what? I mean, Great Britain has a good tradition of kind of balance in their military technologies. And as far as the airplanes go, they didn't go so power hungry and durability as the Americans did. They cared about maneuverability still. Spitfire is a good example of that. In the U.S., it was all about horsepower, speed, and stuff like this, because there was a different focus. Japanese focused on the maneuverability, dogfighting capability. The Americans focused on pursuit and interception. Well, when those two worlds collided in 1941, things didn't go so well for the Americans, okay? The P-40s, F-4F Wildcats, the F-2F Rooster Buffaloes were torn apart. Now, yeah, they had their share of zeros, but the loss ratio was completely out of whack. So if someone just kind of looks at that without actually realizing what's going on in the whole picture, they're going to look like, well, the Zero is just this phenomenal plane and these others are garbage. The reality is somewhat different. And I think we're going to see that same kind of reality here with 8th edition. Let me take you to China again. Again, P-40, Curtiss P-40 Warhawks, pitted against the same Bettys and the same A6M2 Zeros that we were facing elsewhere and being beaten by. And here we have Claire Chennault leading a fighter wing squadron, a little more than a squadron. I want to say it was I'd like to say it was a group, but I don't know, it wasn't that big, of Curtiss P-40 Warhawk pilots tackling Zeros and succeeding. They weren't dogfighting them. They figured out how to handle the Zero, how to handle Japanese tactics, how to fight the war with the equipment they had, how to take the rules and apply them effectively. And they did stunningly, relative to their compatriots, right? Now, by the time 1941 came along, Pearl Harbor came along, and they kind of got brought back into the fold of the American Air Force, or American Army Air Force. Some of those tactics were kind of lost, but others have been kind of picking up those same concepts on their own, and we realized that, okay, yeah, things were kind of turned up on their head by the appearance of the Zero, but if we applied the same technology we have, our F-4Fs and our Curtiss P-40s could hold their own if utilized properly. Okay, and of course, then we went and we developed the Hellcat in response, and the Corsair and all these things to counteract it. Same thing over in in England. You had I love watching the arms race between Germany and Britain. The British had the Hurricane. The Germans had the 109. Now, the 109 was marginally better than the Hurricane. There were things it could do that the Hurricane couldn't. Well, all of a sudden the Spitfire appears. Well, that bests the 109. Well, then all of a sudden the W190 occurs. It comes into play. And that bests the early Spitfire. Spitfire Mark II. Well, okay, but then the Focke-Wulf A3 bests that. And then you have the 5. And it's just every new technology, new model of the Spitfire, the FW190 or the ME109G. We have all of them kind of moved their technology just ahead of the opponent, just enough. It was an arms race. It turned the tables left and right. And so you really couldn't sit there and say, well, this plane was no good or this thing was no good. And just like in 8th, we're going to see the same thing. Right now, I've seen posts in groups or chats and places where, well, these units aren't all that great anymore, or this is no good, or this. And it's like, it's way too early. The Curtiss P-40 was supposed to be no good, but Chennault proved it was good. So we only have had a couple weeks of practice at this. After another month, we're going to find out some players that have figured out just how to take these poor units and turn them into really good armies. Okay, I think it is a very useful way to learn by starting small. Now, I've taught things for years, for decades. I taught fencing for decades, okay? And you didn't just throw everything at them. You gave them small pieces and built up on it. Now, we all have, 40K background. Well, all saber fencers that I would teach had a foil background. But it still didn't throw it all at them because there's a lot of nuances. The game of saber is rewritten compared to foil. There are some similarities, but there are some very serious differences. Epée is a complete rewrite of the rules compared to foil. And saber and epée the same way. So yes, they have a foundation, but you still can't throw everything at them. The best way to learn something that's complex is in small pieces. So I think we'd all benefit from a learning perspective on starting small. Start with a 400, 500 point list. I think 500 point list is about where this you might want to start. I think it's equivalent to the old Combat Patrol 400 point game. 40 power level is where we're going to be starting at the shop. So, I mean, that's where we're at. But don't go for the 1,000 point or the 100 power level right off the bat. Start small. Some of my lists are going to be 6 units, some are going to be 12. It all depends on how I want to build it. So I'm not going to have a lot to manage. I can devote most of my time managing my learning of the various rules. With some of my lists, they're heavy on infantry. Some are leaning heavier toward vehicles or monstrous creatures. So I can actually shift the learning based on what I want to do next. It's going to help me, using an army I know, see how the rules impact the army. Not my grand 2,000, 2,500 point army that I really love to play, but the ones, just how does the rules impact the units that I like to play, and how will I need to now build my army to tackle all comers or tackle certain other factions, right? So that's one thing I want to kind of suggest. Start small, don't start big. A small game you can get done more quickly than a large game. You can fit 2, maybe 3 in the time it takes to play a large game. So you could rotate through your units by simply taking different combinations and still get as much fun, if not more, okay? And you'll be learning the system as you go. The constant repetition, the constant drilling, if you will, constant practice helps you learn the rules. Now, I'm going to take advantage of this low point level patrol detachment structure to make my learning easier. Now, I've heard a lot of people, even some of the guys that I'm exposed to here where I'm living, they're out there playing 1,000 point games, 100 power level games, throwing everything they've got on the table and duking it out. I don't know if they're really learning the rules or really getting a grasp of the intricacies of the game because they've got so much going on because they're used to playing those large games. Their minds probably are missing a lot of nuances. So by starting small, in our case, we're going to be starting with 40 power level points. You're especially being forced into this patrol detachment. You kind of have to take a few units, a variety of units, but one or two, not spamming something or making a super powerful just monstrous creature list kind of thing. And you're going to have a chance to learn in a small game multiple times, because it should go very quickly, how the rules actually play for these. And you should be able to actually turn around a few different lists. I think I've got 9 or 10 different Tau 40-point lists. I've got at least 5 orc lists. I think I got 6 orc lists. And I've got, I want to say just 4, maybe 5 Tyrannid lists, Exite lists. All at 40 points, all different mixed units. So I can rotate through and play the many games and really get a feel for what's going on and understand how they're going to impact. So my approach to this 8th edition is going to be limiting myself. I'm going to start with the Tau. Obviously, that's my favorite army, and run a few games with that. I will bring my orcs with a small, couple enough units, enough models to build those 5 lists. Now I have 2 different armies I could play. So as I learn, since I know the Tau well, I will be able to grasp more easily the differences in the way the game plays with the units I'm very, very familiar and come naturally to me. Now, when it comes time to understand the different dynamics of the rules, the fact that I don't have to learn how to use my favorite army, I'm going to learn and see those differences more easily. Now, orcs I haven't played in a long time. If I were to start with those, I'd have to relearn kind of the orcs, how to run an orc army, and then figure out how to use it in 8th. So this way I'm focusing in on with the units I'm best able to work with. See what 8th does. Learn the system. Learn the differences. Then grab the orcs and play with those and see what close combat is like. Heck, I'm looking forward to trying out close combat by taking my Tau Devilfish and going after flyers. Okay, I'm looking forward to crisis suits engaging flyers. I'm looking for all these different things, but the fact is Tau are not good at close combat, and they're not geared for those charges and everything. Orcs are. Orcs also got a good set of vehicles, so I have a lot of things I can learn with the orcs, and some of them are going to be better. I can also add with the orcs, I can add that warp head or psychic phase in there. Okay, so by purposely working with smaller lists, picking a variety of units that are relatively small, but instead of a few in number, because they're going to have fewer rules that I'll need to remember and reference data sheets for, I will be able to learn those very quickly, switch up the list quickly to the next game and by rotating in a different unit and learn those, switch armies completely and learn those differences. I think I'm going to get a lot more out of my first week of gaming 8th than I would if I went through some big 1,000 point, 2,000 point game where I really want to try to get all my models back on the table and just go for it, right? I think I might really lose a sense of what's going on. And remember, your opponent is learning it just like you. So if you keep it small, you can both make mistakes and learn from your mistakes and see each other's mistakes. Instead of being swamped by all these huge armies, making mistakes left and right, and the battle drags on longer with all that going on. You don't have as much time to reset as if you start with a smaller point list. If, let's say, maybe within 45 minutes, your 40 power level point list game is done. It just goes that quickly. Maybe it's an hour, I don't know, we'll see. But a 2,000 point list, 100 power level, whatever they call it, I don't know what they're doing now. We're looking at, again, a 2-3 hour game. Well, I can get 5 or 6 games in with my smaller point list in the space of 2 games of a larger point list. I think I'm going to be able to practice a lot more and learn more, and I'll have all those resets, game over 5 times instead of just 2 times. I'll get to try again. So I think taking the smaller game approach may enable me to really learn the intricacies and the things that have changed by focusing on one unit type at a time. I know in my tile list, I think I got 4 different units, 5 different units. I know one list, for example, I've got my razor shark, a hammerhead, devilfish with the strike team in it, and the cadre fireblade. I think that's my entire list. 5 units at a 40 power level, something like that. If I've missed something, maybe it's the riptide. I don't know. I'm throwing, but I've got a small model count. Yeah, some of them are large, but still small model count. Go the other extreme, where I've got almost all Cruton infantry, pathfinders, what have you. I've got a lot more models, a lot more units, but I'm focusing then, within this small battle, on just the infantry tactics, learning how cover interacts with infantry now. So the way I'm approaching it is take a look at what I want to learn and look at what models do I want to play. That's where I started. I want to play my hammerhead. I want to play my battle wagon for my orcs. I want to play my pathfinders. Now that they're really, really cheap, I really want to play those. I definitely want to play the flyers. My Decajet's going to be in most of the lists. My Razor Shark's going to be in most of my lists. I'm just a flyer kind of guy. So I'm able to do that and get more games in, slightly tweaking as I go. So that's the way I'm starting. First day is Tau, maybe with some orcs. The second week, on the 17th, the 24th, I'm going to do orcs and then maybe my Dragon Masters. We'll see. That way I can slowly build. Now the first week's 40 power level. Second week I don't know what they're going to set it to, but it'll be slightly larger, which will give me again more chance to just grow my experience and learn how to manage a larger force under these new rules. So I think there's going to be a lot of learning going on, and your opponent's going to be learning as much as you are. Now some might have a few games under their belt, but that's not going to change a lot. We all learn at different paces, and we all have different experiences. If your opponent makes a lot of mistakes and things go really well for you, you may not have learned as much as you thought. If things go horribly for you, you probably learn more than your opponent. Just be honest with yourself about stuff like that. So reserve judgment on what different units are going to be able to do. Practice it out on the table. I'm not going to try to win as far as not bringing power lists. I'm bringing lists of models I want to play because I want to play with those models. You know, they are toys for me to play with after all. And the other thing is I want to make sure I'm including units that'll help me learn the rules, right? That's the approach I'm taking. Now, also one thing I'm 100% planning on filming, probably a couple of these because it's only going to take an hour and a half maybe. I might be able to get 3, well, maybe I'll maybe be able to get 2 games in video-wise. I only have the 1 battery for the camera, so we'll have to see how that plays out. But these games they're learning games, right? So we'll make mistakes. Hopefully we'll catch them, and I'll put those in the in the captions on screen so you'll be able to see and learn along with us. That's the whole point. I think I mentioned that in my last channel update. So that's the approach I'm taking. Just going to start with those basic 3 armies. You won't be seeing the Eldar and Dark Eldar aspects of this for quite a few weeks. Probably not until, I think, August at the earliest. That might be the earliest I'll bring those out. See if I can be able to afford that. I want to buy the rule book before I buy any other Xenos indexes. And the last one I will work on will be the Imperial Guard. It's not because I don't like them. It's just that I figure if I'm going to wait that long, I might as well wait till the Codex comes out. So once we learn more of the Codex schedule, I'll make my decision then about whether to go for that index or not. We'll just have to see how that goes. Okay. All right, so that's probably enough of the ramble today. Hopefully you were maybe informed, I don't know, maybe enlightened. You might have a completely different opinion, and you might think I'm really crazy or stupid. Doesn't matter, really. It's just the way I'm going to approach things. I thought I'd put it out there. Maybe someone will find it useful. If not, hope you got something done while you were hopefully painting along, and I didn't waste your time too bad. All right, thanks for sticking with me. Again, share, like, subscribe if you can, if you want, and especially if you want to know when my next videos are coming out. Click that notification bell, and we'll see you in the next video, whatever that happens to be. All right, bye-bye.